Hi, my name is Bridget Richardson. I'm the Assistant Director of Ecumenical and Pastoral Initiatives at the Nesty Center for Faith and Culture at University of St. Thomas in Houston. And I'm here with Dr. Shivas Amin, Associate Professor of Biology at UST and Project Director of our HSI STEM grant. So thank you, Dr. Amin, for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to come and talk about some of these things that we've got planned to talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, we're outside. You're outside in your backyard. I am in my very bare backyard, which is why my house is behind me with the brick wall. But, we're doing this for Earth Day and we're talking about nature. So how appropriate that we're both outside for this dialogue this morning, right?
Yeah, I think it's good for everyone to go outside. I think that's really important right now because most of us are probably cooped up inside, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's start there. Why do you think during the coronavirus, this is such a good time to be outside and in nature?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I think most of you are probably experiencing a very similar reality. You are generally confined to your house. You're probably walking around in a neighborhood, probably a subdivision, or maybe there's some commercial areas around you. If you're lucky, there might be a city park, but the city parks are closed right now, right? So that's a big problem as well. So in reality, most of you are spending your time outside walking around in like a human-made subdivision, right? And this is a particular challenge when you think about like, how are we supposed to appreciate nature when everything around us is just kind of this like sterile environment of just having concrete and kind of the same grass that you see everywhere. And so what I think right now is this important time for us to not only reflect upon like what is going on in the world with the economy and with jobs and things like that, but also to think about our place in nature, right? Because we are now kind of confined to a space where we're trying to somewhat enjoy the outdoors as our one form of activity. And notice we're really not getting a whole lot of nature out of it, right? If you're lucky enough to have the right kind of plants and things like that, you might see a few more butterflies and bees. But there are probably people that are walking around and the only creatures they're gonna see are other human beings, right? And so I think at this point, right, it's a really good chance for us to just meditate on where we are in society, what we're trying to achieve, and probably take a moment to think about how we can use our own personal spaces to enrich these things that we're not getting in the world as we walk outside, right? And so one of the things that I often preach is to try to use your own space to build native in natural areas. So you can see I'm sitting out in my backyard here. My backyard has a lot of different plants in it. And actually it's not all like native vegetation and wildflowers designed to attract things like butterflies and bees. There's actually like vegetable crops, and there's we have a fruit tree back there. Actually, the thing that's right behind my head is an orange tree. So I have, not only do I have like food in my backyard, right, which is something that right now we should all appreciate, but I also have things that will attract pollinators, and a lot of different types of just overall like biodiversity. And so, everybody has different spaces that they can use in different ways. I think what's really important is that we figure out what can we do in our own space. And right now we may have extra time. I was telling you earlier that all of my friends, especially my neighbors back there, they've been spending their time making gardens. So like my neighbor's been hauling in dirt, and he's had his 4 girls out there working like labor. Like they've gone out and shoveling everything out there, and they've been amazing. They've created 3 or 4 garden beds out there. And they have a lot of different things that they're planting as well. And so it's not only about trying to plant like native plants, it's about just trying to get back into the garden, get your hands in the dirt. You have the time now. You might as well create nature around you, because as I said, when most of you are probably going out in the neighborhood, it's probably not nature. It's probably concrete and one type of grass.
Yeah, and I love that right now. I mean, I've gone outside a little bit, but I'm working usually inside. So it's kind of cool to be outside. Like there's a lot happening around me. Like I listen outside, and where I'm at, there's construction happening, there's music playing. So it's kind of fun to be out here anyway. But I'm one of those, like, this is my bare backyard. Like there's nothing. And when you turn that corner, there's still nothing. There's more yard, but there's nothing. So yeah. Somebody like me, like, how do I even get started with creating something like what you have and wanting to get into, the nature of my space?
Right. So I think, first of all, we have to be honest with the type of spaces that we have and the advantages that exist in different spaces, right? So we can't all just go out and like grow a prairie garden in the back of our yards, because that's not feasible. So I think one of the things that each person needs to do when they get out in their personal space is to assess what kind of lighting do they have, what kind of drainage do they have, and from that standpoint, and also like I get this comment all the time because I'm always talking about putting in gardens and native plants. You probably have to think about what your homeowners association says as well. I find homeowners associations to be the scourge of creativity, and in many ways gardening is a true expression of human creativity, because you get to like kind of create on a space and maintain it, right? So it's like a living canvas. And so in that way, homeowners association will sometimes kind of condense what you can or cannot do. You may have to start a guerrilla garden if that is up to you, but who knows? I don't know what is required in your space. But anyways, the first thing is assess kind of what you can have out there, right? If you have a lot of sunlight, right, you might be able to do a lot more than if you're getting partial shade. And so I think some people have backyards where they're only getting partial shade. And in that moment, they need to think about different types of plants they're going to put out there. But generally speaking, the rule that I tell most people is in Houston, the soil that we have generally to grow plants in is not the best. It's very clay rich soil. And so you kind of have to replace your soil in order to give your plants a chance to actually take root, right? So one of the things that I recommend doing is taking out the old vegetation that you don't want. So if you have, like I saw in your yard, you have a bunch of just kind of like grass seeds everywhere. If you just go through and you just cut some of that area out and dig it out, and then you replace it with soil, and then maybe put a border around it, right? So you put a border around the garden, and then what that does is it contains your soil in one spot. And that is just kind of a makeshift garden. And I'll be honest, like I am such a cheap human being. Like I am so cheap. I don't like spending money at all. And so I'm always thinking of ways to do this without spending elaborate amounts of money. And so if you go to the hardware store, you can see there are different types of bricks that you can get. So bricks can be one way that you can go that can be kind of expensive. But we've also done things where we've just taken like boards and just kind of built them around. And, for like $30, $40, we've constructed like a container out of some boards to just hold the dirt, right? And you can even look at your natural landscape. You may have logs that you can use to kind of shove in the dirt. You may have just a natural pit that you can kind of fill in, but be careful with those natural pits. Sometimes those are pits for a reason, because the water is draining into those areas. And if you put your plants in there, wash right out, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do, but the first thing, assess the area, then kind of augment the soil a little bit, right? Give yourself like a little bed to work with, and then figure out what you want in that area, right? Think about what you're passionate about. I think too many people are just trying to do what other people are telling them to do. I would say think about what you think would be interesting to go out and continually monitor and keep alive. If you are a person that has no interest in bees or butterflies, first of all, I'd like to fix that. But if I can't fix that, at least go outside and plant like a vegetable garden or something like that you might get some joy out of. And I often say that it just takes one kind of plant to get you into it. Once you start going one plant, you will really get into the process of growing other things, and you'll recognize the interconnectedness of your ecosystem, right? So for example, if you're going to grow a tomato plant, right? Your tomatoes are going to make little flowers, and those flowers have to be fertilized in order to make your tomato. You could go out there and painstakingly with a little brush pollinate every single one of your flowers in order to maximize your tomato yield. But it would be easier to just attract things like bees, which will go do the work for you, right? So you can, if you're going to plant out some vegetable gardens, think about bringing some things in that will bring in some of our native bees that will assist you in growing your vegetables, right? So just to kind of recap, I think it's like a 3-step plan. People love 3-step plans, right? So like figure out what you can do in your area, kind of build up the soil bed. And the soil that you choose may be dependent on this next step, right? Figure out what you're passionate about and get some plants out there for you to try. And I'm going to tell you something right now. You're going to fail, right? It happens. Like I've killed so many plants, right? I've probably killed hundreds of plants. And, the first few times that happens, you're like, oh. what did I do? I can never, this was life that I took and I can never do it again. But then you realize that like, sometimes that's a strategy for certain plants. They make like thousands of seeds and many of them germinate and many of them don't make it past a certain stage based on the requirements that they have, right? So, you know, recognize that failure is going to be part of that process. A lot of what you see out here, totally not what we intended to put in those spots. You know, when you go look out there and over to this shoulder right here, you might be seeing some like maybe some orangey yellowy flowers. We never planted those. Actually, those blew in from this side of our garden after it made seed. It actually blew to the other side, and we actually had a bald spot of dirt, and they just came up there. And so what we did is we just kind of went through with a weed whacker and just made a path right through the middle of it so that you could walk through a little path of nature. But the plants kind of chose that spot for themselves, right? They figured out, hey, that looks like a cool spot. I'm going to take root here. And, you know, you have to remove things that you don't want. But a lot of times it's like, okay, that's a garden bed now, right? And so we kind of treat our backyard as a very living, moving thing, which is easy for us in our situation, right? So that's why I kind of go back to always assess what you can do in your own backyard. If you have a bunch of children that are constantly running back and down forth the middle of the garden, turning the center of that into a garden is probably not a good idea, right? What you want to do is you want to work on the edges, right? Probably near your fences. And if you look over on my shoulder, you can probably see a trellis, which is leaned up on the side. That's always a good thing that you can use on the sides of houses so that you can grow vines up. And that's actually one of my favorite plants in my whole backyard. That's a passion vine. So it will, if you wait long enough, it'll make passion fruit, but it never does in my backyard because it's a host plant for the Gulf fritillary butterfly. And so the Gulf fritillaries will come and they will lay their eggs on the passion vine, and actually they will eat all of my passion vine. And so the passion vine actually it grows out, and then over the course of a year, it just gets eaten down into like a horrible little nub. But the cool thing about it is that it spawns probably 30 or so Gulf fritillary caterpillars every year. And I find them all over the place, right? On like the sides of those little metal bins and underneath the trellis, you'll find little chrysalises, and then butterflies will emerge in your own backyard. And so that's always been one of my favorite plants because, you know, I get to watch a life cycle happen as part of it, right? So as I said, follow your interests. Some of you might not be interested in growing a vegetable. You might actually want to watch a living creature grow, right? So planting something like a passion vine where you can actually get caterpillars that will munch on it, and right, and kids can watch it like, oh my God, look at that little caterpillar. And then they can watch it turn into a chrysalis, and they can watch it turn into a butterfly. There's a lot of like joy and entertainment that you can get out of just something like that. So figure out what you're interested in and just start, right? I think that's the most important thing. People are always just trying to get things perfect. But in reality, like I said, you're going to fail the first few times you do it. So you might as well just start trying something and build around it and prove it as you go.
And Dr. Amin, how does that, because you are so knowledgeable about all of this, and I think you're just so connected to that cycle of life, of plant life, of, you know, your own life. You know, it seems like there's this connectedness between what you're doing in nature with how you're relating it. And, you know, the reason that you and I even connected at first was to talk about Quieta Amazonia, Pope Francis's exhortation that came out in February about the Amazon, but also with the larger message of how we're connecting to nature and creation. So, you know, kind of to combine those things, how does growing something in your backyard and knowing what that document is saying about our connectedness with the world and with nature, how are you bringing that all together, that whole cycle of life?
Yeah, so I think that it's super important with every single person that they really reflect upon within their own faith how they are supposed to treat nature and take care of nature, right? And I think in every situation, you'll find that our goal is to respect nature and take care of it, because I think we know deep inside that we're supposed to live with nature, right? And I think at the heart of what Pope Francis is saying is that we actually need to live with the land, right? And so in the third chapter, right, which is entitled Ecological Dream, right? I think that's what it's called. Let me go back and check my notes, make sure that's right. an ecological dream, just to be clear. In an ecological dream, right, what he's really trying to do is he's trying to make a case that the indigenous people who have like adapted and lived with that land spiritually, physically, all of those elements, those people that have lived with the land know the best about how to take care of the land. So I'll just tell you, you started this comment by saying, I seem to know a lot. I don't know as much as I wish I knew. Okay. And that's something that I think any person who knows anything would say that, right? I wish I absolutely knew more. And the way that I've learned anything that I've ever learned is by being a part of it and doing it and being involved in growing things, right? And so when you ask, why is it that the indigenous people take care of the environment better than the people that are not indigenous? It is because they are the ones that are growing and living with the land. They are physically interacting with the land. And so in this portion of the document, it's really important that we kind of identify the importance of living with the land, right? So it doesn't matter if you're like a banker or an accountant or whatever you do, which is so far away from potentially nature. Get your butt into your backyard and do something with nature, right? And I think that in alone will help you generate an appreciation and understanding of how to do it. But the thing that I really wanted to highlight in this chapter, I'm going to read you a quote, which I thought was a really great quote. And I think it really symbolizes what we're talking about. So it says, "It is not enough to be concerned about preserving the most visible species in danger of extinction. There's a crucial need to realize that the good functioning of ecosystems also requires fungi, algae, worms, insects, reptiles, and an innumerable variety of microorganisms. Some less numerous species, although generally unseen, nonetheless play a critical role in maintaining the equilibrium of a particular place." That is something that would come from my own heart, right? And that is written by a religious leader, right? And so I think it's really important that we all take this time to appreciate the message that he's trying to spread, and really, I think it's really commendable that people are going out and really advocating for the environment, not only through their personal means, not only through their business means, but also through their spiritual means, right? And I think what he's doing right here is really telling you that your true connection to everything in this world is really built through your interaction with nature, right? And if you neglect it so much so that you don't pay attention to the nature that is supposed to be around you and you don't take care of it, you will ultimately bring about your own demise, right? And so it's important that within every aspect of our lives that we really kind of take notice of this, and we really put effort into making sure that we appreciate not only what the immediate organisms are doing around us, but the entire system, right? And I think one thing, and we talked about this a while ago, but I'd like to bring it up just because I think it's a really fun topic. A lot of people don't like going in nature because they're afraid of certain things, right? Yeah, I love this topic because I'll be honest, I was afraid of a lot of things, and I still am afraid of a lot of things, right? But as you learn about things and as you get close to things, you will find an appreciation for those particular creatures, and many of your fears will melt away. Not all of them will, and it's not healthy for all of them to melt away, right? That's probably not a good idea either. But your fear of things like so I have encountered people that are afraid of butterflies, right? And you make that face, but I try not to be. It's interesting. People come out with all kinds of fears when they go out in nature, and
That's
I just
crazy.
want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right?
Dr. Amin and I talked about my fear of most flying things like wasps, bees.
Yeah.
But I understand their value. I am just terrified of being stung by a wasp or a bee. But
That's
butterflies
okay.
are beautiful. Like I could, if a butterfly lands on me, I'm good. That's fine. But ants, nope.
So ants, I stay away from ants. There's no situation in which me and ants works out well. So I just kind of avoid them. And there are certain types of ants that I actually eliminate from my backyard
Cool.
because they're not actually ants that I want in my eco. They're not really native ants, right? So one of the things is if you start studying about plants, you'll recognize that there is this concept of native and invasive plants. And then you'll really realize that a lot of this goes back into our natural history of everything that goes with human beings and moving around this planet. And the same thing goes with the insects that we've brought around. And some of these insects are invasive species and really not helpful in our backyard. So I do eliminate some of them. So, you know, like it's not quite possible to just leave something and just forget about it. There's always maintenance in the system.
Yeah. And even though I'm nervous or afraid of those things, like especially through our conversations, it's just a constant reminder of how all of it fits together for the overall beauty of what we call nature. So, you know, like you were saying, the bees pollinate the plants and all these different creatures, they come together to make things more beautiful in ways that we may not understand from our vantage point, but it is working toward this beautiful ecosystem. And I know that with the University of St. Thomas Pocket Prairie, that is what is happening. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the Pocket Prairie and that we have this little, you know, this hub of nature of native plants right on our campus when we get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, it actually, so like it's outdoors. So those of you that live around it can go visit it. But let me give you a little bit of like backstory first. So I think it's important for all of us to recognize that we live actually in like an ecosystem, right? And we don't even recognize that. We don't recognize what we live in as like a native ecosystem. I once had a friend who worked in conservation and they did projects in like the Amazon, which is relevant to this conversation, and in Africa. And they would raise money in the United States and they would take that money into these areas to try to preserve and maintain these ecosystems. And I remember him telling me a story of when he went to Africa and, you know, they gave this large endowment to build fences to protect some of this wildlife. And the herdsmen and the tribesmen were so grateful, and they went to him and they said, this is such an amazing thing that people were able to gift this to us. I'm just so curious, like, what do you guys do to preserve your own creatures in your own nature in your own area? And he had no answer. There's no answer, right? Like what we have parks and we have like reserve areas, but are we actually building like elaborate ecosystems to protect and build our biodiversity in this area? And, you know, he came and told me that story and it kind of floored me. And I started thinking about like, what kind of ecosystem do I live in and what should I be preserving, right? And so I come to find out that we live in a coastal prairie ecosystem, okay? Turns out this is one of the most endangered ecosystems on the entire planet. Why would you think it's such an endangered ecosystem?
I don't know, maybe, is it because of, I have no idea. If it's a coastal prairie, it seems like that's a opposite, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first problem.
Well, no, I think the coastal prairie ecosystem used to be a massive swath that went all the way down from like Louisiana down into the coast of Texas and took a large swath. One of the reasons why it's gone is both you and I are living it right now. We built
in our planned communities.
We built houses, we built roads on them, we built farms on them, we built everything. And the reason is that coastal prairies are really good for growing stuff, right? They grow prairie grass. And so, you know, we built a lot of things on them. And so in reality, we completely destroyed the coastal prairie ecosystem and there's less than 2% of it left. And so when I tell that to students, sometimes they get a little bit sad, especially the native Houstonians. I'm a native Houstonian as well. And, you know, when we start to hear that, we think about like our home is built on a completely decimated ecosystem and we didn't do it immediately, but the people before us and before them, they did it and we're still using it in the same way that they did. So in many ways, that's still on us, right? Yeah. When we learn this, we kind of get a little upset. So I've mentioned to a lot of my students, and I had a student, Erin Novak, and she graduated. She's at Texas A&M, getting a master's in ecological sciences, basically like how to manage ecosystems. She's a wonderful student. She could have done anything with her life, and she chose to go in that pathway. When I mean anything, she really had that kind of talent. And she kind of heard this and we kind of hatched a scheme together to get a prairie on campus. So we wanted to take a spot of land and that was normally just a green grass lawn like you might think of. remove the green grass, and build in like a ecosystem, a prairie ecosystem. And so we got into contact with a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that contributed to it. I'll tell you that the day that we came out and actually like did the majority of the work, there were like 40, 50 people representing all elements of the student body, the campus, the people around the community even came out. It was really cool. And then there was a lot of nonprofit organizations. The Katy Prairie Conservancy came out there, and they even have like a little sign out there because they really helped us do a lot. We got a lot of plants from the Audubon, which were really great. And so Erin and I basically coordinated through external kind of organizations to get seeds and plants. She also helped me work internally with our facilities. At the time, Mr. Howard Rose was in charge of facilities. He's a really great man, and we took the time and we really went to him with something that was really meaningful to us. We told him, we were going to build this prairie. And most people, when they hear we're going to take this thing that it's easy for you to manicure, we're going to get rid of it, we're going to put it in this garden, most of them are going to say, get out of my office. Howard he's incredible. And he took the time to listen to what we had to say. And he really identified a spot on, like he said, yeah, you can do that. And as long as you have a good plan and you work with us, it'll be great. And, we still work with facilities today. They just manage the outside grass and we take care of everything inside the boundaries. And so if you're curious, the spot that we picked, it's down Graustark, which is the same road that the garage is on and that the gym is on. And if you go down to the gym where it has that like caged in area where there's that little soccer field that the students play in, if you go across the street of Graustark, just kind of a little down the road, you're going to see that there is this just blooming prairie. And a lot of it looks like what's going over my shoulder where there are bunch grasses and wildflowers and things like that. And it wasn't always like that. It used to be, like, honestly, just a clear, like, lawn, just all mowed to that level. And we paid somebody every day or every week to just come out and mow it down to that level. And we took that whole big space and we made it into a prairie grass. And so essentially what we did is we came in, cut out all of the sod, the grass that was there. We had them deliver dirt and gravel. The dirt and the gravel was paid for through our institutional HSI STEM grant that I'm actually the project director of. Essentially what we're doing is we're creating an ecological laboratory for some of our classes to use in outdoor spaces, because we recognize the need for students to actually be able to go out and use like ecological spaces. And so they paid for the dirt and the gravel, and we had 40 volunteers come in. We spread that dirt everywhere. We made a path with the gravel. That path has long grown over by plants in the same way that this happens in my backyard. And we kind of clear new paths every year because it shifts and moves with time. And we put up a little border around it. And, the first year, it was terrible. It was awful. It was just the ugliest thing that you've ever seen. Okay. And then, so we came through and we cut down ugly things. We put a little bit more seed out the second run with it. The second year is a little bit better. And then the third year, it really, I think the second and the third year, we got some amazing blooms of flowers. And you can go out there right now and you're going to see there's tons of flowers out there. I mean, it's April 20th, right? April 21st is Earth Day. We're going to have tons of different flowers out there for this whole week, this whole month. If you live in the area, you can just go walk around. It's outdoor. Maintain your social distancing while you're out there. But you can walk around the edge and you're going to see all kinds of wildflowers and bunch grasses. And you're going to see all kinds of native bees that we have out there. And there's a lot of butterflies. If you catch it on a sunny day, you're going to catch them out there as well. And so it's a very cool place. I could probably share like thousands of pictures I've taken of flowers and bees out there. But that's just me. And, I would encourage anybody, if you want to take a walk, an excursion, go look at it, go walk around it. There's no building you can go inside of. There's a greenhouse behind it, but I would stay out of that greenhouse. That's not affiliated with the prairie garden. That's actually Father Ted's orchid garden. And if you'd like to go in there, you should contact Father Ted. He'd love to take you in there. He's going to get mad at me now that I advertise that, but he will.
All right. But yeah, I mean, I think with Earth Day, I think it's just such a cool opportunity. Like, even me being outside while I'm at work right now is so refreshing. And you've given me confidence, like I can do this, I can plant something, I can try to grow something. And just to kind of tie it all together, how would you say like Earth Day is a good day to just do an action in nature, whatever that is? Like, how would you kind of tie it all together to our, creating something in nature and also staying connected with it as human beings?
So I'm gonna preface this by saying I don't like Valentine's Day. Okay? And it's a really weird thing to say, but
Good premise. I like it.
I actually don't like Valentine's Day because what we end up doing is we end up doing one thing for somebody that we love and call it done.
Fair.
Right? Like I took care of you. We did the Valentine's Day thing. Let's move on with our lives.
Right.
So really what I would advocate for is if you're going to do something just on Earth Day, like if that's what you're going to choose to do something that's going to last. Do something that's going to make you persist in your activity beyond just that one day, right? I want you to gain a deeper appreciation for everything that you're doing outside. I know some of you just don't want to go outside, but like in truth, it's something that we really should be doing. I mean, honestly, like from your physiology, it's important that you actually go outside because it actually does help in like vitamin absorption and vitamin acquisition, things like that. So you need to get outside anyways. But I think right now, if you're going to do something for Earth Day, do something that lasts. Start a garden. Start volunteering with something. Instead of just doing one activity, like planting one thing and moving on with it, try to build something that you think that you're going to be invested in for a while, right? And I've always said action starts locally. We can all point our fingers at big this and corporation that. What do you do in your own backyard, right? I always try to look back on that question that my friend brought to me, right? We send millions of dollars overseas to take care of other people's land. What do we do in our own backyard, right? And so that's what I would say on Earth Day. Let's start something, and it doesn't have to be that we start it and it's a movement and we're moving everything. Just start one thing to just get yourself more acquainted in it. And then you might see that might actually build as time goes on. I think if everybody starts doing that, treat Earth Day as a way to get acquainted with nature, right? Don't view it as just like a one-day service obligation. View it as something that you want to grow in your life. And then I think we're all going to be better off if we do things like that.
Very well said. And thank you so much for joining me today. Like, this is so exciting because, now is such a beautiful time to reconnect with nature. Like, you read the news and pollution is down because people aren't driving. Yeah. People are literally at home. So, I come outside and I breathe, and where I'm at, it's loud, but it's kind of cool outside. It's not crazy humid right now in Houston either. So it's nice. So
yeah, we were really given a gift. I mean, we were all shoved inside of our houses with nowhere to go. And it just happened to coincide with some of the best weather that Houston has ever had, like on a continuous stretch. It's crazy how amazing it is out here. And the thing that I find is really interesting is the weather's been nice and I haven't had as many mosquitoes yet either. So it's like the world is doing us a favor in this moment, right?
Totally.
So I think everything in the world is telling you, go outside and do something, right? So get involved.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dr. Amin. It's always so much fun to talk with you, and I really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing before I head out? I'm really passionate about things like this, and I always have people want to ask like random questions, and I'm always willing to talk to the public and field questions if you have questions. So you can always look me up and email me if you like. My email address is real simple. It's amins@stthom.edu. And I usually, if you talk to my students, I answer my emails fairly quickly. I like to kind of communicate with people about this because I recognize that like communication is the only way that we're going to grow, right? So if there's anybody out there that wants to talk more or have more conversations about it, let me know because I'm always willing to help.
Awesome. And I'll include the link to your email address and also the link to the fuller story about the UST Pocket Prairie in the description. So we'll definitely make sure that people can connect with you because you're super fun to talk with, but you're just such a valuable resource in helping people think, outside of the box in terms of what they think nature and interacting with nature looks like and means. So I'm so excited that you're at UST and that, I get to communicate with you regularly. So again, thank you, Dr. Amin. You're awesome, and have a wonderful week and a wonderful day.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And, you know, I'll see y'all outside at some point when they let us get back together, right?
Yeah. All right, bye.
See ya.